Hey there, it's Gabrielle from SpeechKids and Raising Orchid Kids. And today we are going to talk about 100% rules. And that's like a title. It's like a thing, 100% rules. And so I'm going to explain what I mean. And what I mean by what are 100% rules, it means they are family rules, family policies, way of doing things that are true 100% or as close as you can get 100% of the time. Okay, so what these rules are, they're just kind of like how we do business around here. What is true in our family. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of 100% rules that worked in our house. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what worked in other people's houses. And then you can start to sort of think about what might be good rules, 100% rules for you, particularly as we're going into a change of season where school is going to be ending, summer is going to be beginning. You might want to come up with some of these. So these are mostly good when we explain them. These are mostly good for kids 5 or 6 and up. For kids who are younger than 5, you're going to make the rules and you're just going to kind of tell them what they are, right? And you're not going to have too many. This is an error that I see lots of people making, which is like they want to have a rule for everything. Choose your battles. Pick the stuff that's important. So I'm going to get to the examples and then we'll talk about them. In our house, dessert became a major issue when my daughter was probably 4 or 5, 6. And every night we would finish dinner and everybody would be clamoring for dessert. And my husband and I were annoyed by it. And then we figured out it was because we didn't want to be legislating or having this conversation every day about what was for dessert, how much dessert were they going to get, all of this stuff. So we created a 100% rule that dessert in our house happens on days that begin with the letter S. And so the kids knew, because they knew the days of the week at that point, right? That on Saturdays and Sundays, that was a dessert night. And at no other time did they need to ask whether it was a dessert night because it wasn't. And they knew that in advance. Do you see how the 100% rule kind of operated there? And I swear to you, there was no conversation about dessert. There was only, on Saturday, I think I'm going to have whatever. Or on Sunday night, I'm so happy it's a dessert night. And then on Monday, there was no conversation about dessert. That was the end of the conversation because there was this 100% rule. And so that's sort of one example. Another example was as regards screen time. And so some of these rules for us grew out of a family meeting, and I'll do another video on how family meetings can work. But we used to have them sort of quarterly, 3 times a year around like school changes. So at the beginning of the summer, at the end of the summer, and then maybe at the new year. And screen time was a thing that came up a lot because as kids grow, their screen time needs change. And so you want to sort of stay on top of that. Okay, so we had a 100% rule about screen time, which was you got X number of minutes per week. And so if you went over that, right, you were allowed to watch as much at a time as you wanted. But the 100% rule was you got X number, and I honestly can't remember what it was, X number per week. And that was your allotted amount. And if you wanted to have more, it was not a conversation because it was a 100% rule. Okay, for those of you who are dealing with littles, and this is like 3 and under, those 3 to 5-year-olds, they're a tricky bunch because you have some 3-year-olds who are ready to create their own rules and to have input, and you have some 3-year-olds who really are not. And so 3, 4, 5s, you have to really know your child and what they're capable of in terms of figuring out and problem solving with you. For sure, there are some 3-year-olds in the world who have some very good ideas about what their rules should be. And for sure, there are some 3-year-olds who really have no idea. But So they're sort of the gray area. So pick and choose from these two sort of buckets. You've got sort of over 6. You can be very much sort of involved with them and create rules that work for everyone, and you want to get their buy-in. But for 3 and under, you're going to decide what the really key important things are. I would highly recommend that you keep those related to safety. One that I had for my kids was we hold hands in the parking lot 100% of the time. So you see how this gets to be a 100% rule, right? You see a parking lot, it means you're holding my hand. And I was really clear on why I was doing that. And so this is something else I would encourage you to get really clear on, like, why do you have these rules to begin with, right? Because if you are getting into battles, like almost every time something happens, it might be a really good time to put in one of these 100% rules. But make sure it makes sense to you. Holding hands in the parking lot was non-negotiable for me because I knew that they could die if they ran away from me. Like, that was the no-brainer for me. Not everybody has that. And so I'm not suggesting that you have to have this rule, but I am suggesting I'm telling you that was mine. And so it was not negotiable. They didn't get to choose where they held on. Although I have sometimes counseled families to do that. So you can hold my hand or you can hold the stroller. Which one? And for sure, when we're dealing with orchids and kids who need to have a little bit more of a sense of control, we are going to do that. And so the 100% rule for those guys might be I hold the stroller or hand in the parking lot. And that's the 100% rule. Right? So it doesn't actually matter. I hope you're getting this. It doesn't actually matter what the content of the rule is, as long as it is understandable to the child and to you, and you feel like it's important, okay, because it has to be something you can enforce. And that it's, once you've established that it's true for the times that it's true. In other words, a 100% rule about the parking lot doesn't have anything to do with walking on the sidewalk, right? So you might have a separate rule for that. You hold my hand crossing the street. You hold my hand when there's a driveway. Whatever the rule is, it doesn't matter, right? The rules matter less than their understandability and their consistency. That's what we're going for. And so that's why we call them 100% rules. But back to my dessert example, right? It didn't mean we were having dessert every day, right? It just meant 100% of the time on Saturday and 100% of the time on Sunday we had dessert, and 0% on other days. So I hope this was helpful. I would love if you would leave a comment or ask a question. You can reply to this email. If it's coming to you in email form, you can leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube or on social media. And until next time, thanks so much. Bye-bye.